Welcome, everybody. We are back. This is season 2. I don't know what episode. We've been doing so many of them lately. It's so much fun. This is Indie Reads Aloud Radio, and we are back again with returning author Mandy Jo, and she's going to read from her fantasy novel today. Mandy Jo, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Keep writing books. We'll keep having you back. It's just super fun. Super fun. Mandy Jo is a multi-genre author, including fitness, fantasy, time travel, and historical fiction. She has published 3 books and is working on more every day. Upcoming projects include mystery, paranormal, and women's fiction. Mandy Jo is the founder of Creative Slingers of Ink, a writing group that encourages writers of all kinds in connecting indie authors with readers. Aside from writing, Mandy Jo enjoys cooking, photography, travel, genealogy, and she's a self-proclaimed Hallmark movie addict, and we won't hold that against you. Although we could. Today you're going to be reading from Amaranth, which is your fantasy novel, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Tell me a little bit about the story that's in this book. What is this about?
Amaranth was born to an evil witch, but she was abandoned to a good family. And then that whole generation has died off or disappeared. And she ends up getting kidnapped by who she finds out is her brother. Then she finds out about her whole very twisted and evil family tree.
And the plot thickens.
So it's a whole thing of good versus evil. And is it nature or nurture? And who gets to rule the kingdom in the end?
Well, that sounds like tremendous fun. And rumor has it there be dragons in this book?
Yes.
Awesome.
I don't think I left out any of the fantasy creatures. I think I got them all in.
That would be a lot of fantasy creatures. We'll have to read the book and take notes. Make a list. Take a list.
There's a list at the back of the book.
Spectacular. That's awesome. You know me, I'm always looking for fun things to discover about every new book I read.
And I also I hand drew the maps at the back of the book.
Oh, that's right. You artist person, I forgot about that. A skill I will never have. There are no listener advisories in today's reading, which means if you have little ears, invite them to join in. It'll be fun. Not probably little tiny ears because, dragons, but
it's about PG-13-ish.
Okay, perfect. So when you are ready, please take the microphone and read aloud.
Dark, ominous clouds followed Evasius, the centaur, out of the forest as he galloped toward Olderum, the white barn owl, and Zersit, the miniature bright green dragon. They sat on a boulder overlooking the grassland from outside the Risingshire castle. The clouds swirled around the 3 creatures. As the clouds cleared, Oizu, the black dragon, was standing before them. With a deep and raspy voice, he says to the 3, I have come to give you warning of things to come. The days of the Maerith Kingdom are coming to a close. Dark days are ahead. He flapped his wings and was gone, along with the dark clouds. Olderum looked at Zersit with wide eyes and shook his head. They both sat there for a few minutes in bewilderment. Neither knew what to think or do. Evasius broke the silence when he stomped his hoof into the log, splitting it in 2 and said, These dragons are always trying to stir up trouble. There's no way the Maerith Kingdom is coming to a close. It's too big to fall. They were quickly joined by dozens of mystical forest creatures. All the creatures, including Evasius, Olderum, and Zersit, were gathered in silence when the drawbridge slammed down as it opened. A white carriage sped out, being led by 6 Pegasus. The carriage flew into the sky above the forest and disappeared. Zerset looked at Evacious and said, well, Amaranth is certainly in a hurry, while raising his eyebrows and smirking. The sky grew dark as the black clouds rolled in, darkening the skies over the castle, grassland, and forest. A mist formed and brought thunder and lightning. The forest creatures scurried back into the trees to seek shelter. Howling through the branches, the wind kept getting stronger and faster. Soon it was encircling the castle. Above the castle rose Ojulor, the wizard, in his purple and gold robe. With his arms outstretched, he shouted, Alterinum Serpentis! And amber dust flew from his hands, covering the dark clouds until they disappeared. In the far distance, you could faintly hear Krumaz, the evil wizard, threatened, I will be back, and you will be sorry. His evil laugh filled the shadows. Ojulor went back inside the castle to his study, where there were countless shelves of books of all shapes and sizes. He sat at his desk with his writing book open and quill in hand and began writing furiously. Oldham flew in and sat on his desk, rotating his head back and forth while blinking his dark eyes. A short time later, Ash, a brown barn owl, joined him. The two sat there quietly when Narella came prancing in and up onto the desk. Narella sat down on the book right under Ojulor's nose. What are you doing, Narella, you crazy cat? She looked up at him with her bright orange eyes, rubbed the side of her head on his arm, laid back down on his book, and started purring as she closed her eyes. He picked her up and put Narella in her 4-poster bed, adorned with a wood-carved headboard with her name engraved on it. Now stay there while I get some work done, he said to her, and he sat back down at his desk to write. Not even 5 minutes later, the chandelier in the entryway started to sway back and forth before falling to the floor 2 stories below it. The crash startled Ojulor and the owls. They all took off out of the study to the entryway. There was no one there. A broken chandelier lay on the floor along with the pictures and paintings hanging in skewed positions on the wall. Amaranth flew into the outer courtyard of the carriage and Pegasus. Ash flew out to greet her and landed on the back of the first Pegasus. She walked up to him and patted him on the head and floated into the entryway. What happened? He looked up at her. I have no idea. Glurks, come here. Where is that goblin? Glurks came sauntering in with his eyes fixed on the floor. Yeah, you need to clean this up immediately. He proceeded to go back into the other room to get a broom. His feet slowly shuffled along at a snail's pace. Amaranth stood there with her arms crossed and brow furrowed. With her blue eyes blazing, she turned her head to the wooden front door. Moments later, there's a loud bang on it. The dragons, Pimot, Geralt, and Ireniet, flew up and circled over the castle. Pimot, the dark green dragon, landed next to Amaranth. Putting his wing around her, he said in a deep voice, the darkness has come to the door. If you let it in, no one is safe. If you go out to it, the castle will be safe, but you will not. She looked into his dark eyes. A tear ran down her cheek. Why me? Your mother has caused great distress throughout the Caligan forest. She left behind a legacy which can no longer be allowed to continue. The darkness has come to take you back. You will no longer reign in Risingshire Castle, but you will go to the Crystal Crypt. This is your destiny. You will go with Geralt, and he will take you there. She looked at Ireniet, shook her head, stomped her foot. I will not go. I belong here. She flipped her hair back and glared ahead. You can make that choice, but remember that your choices have consequences. The consequence for this choice will be that the darkness will come in here and take you away. It will also destroy anything or anyone that gets in its way. So you can choose that, but you are choosing destruction for your friends. Jumping away from him, she squinted her eyes, raised her hands, and shouted, "Oh, Turian serpents!" However, nothing happened to her like it did Ojulor. She yells it again. "Oh, Turian serpents!" Nothing happened again. Spinning around, she glared at Ojulor. "Why is it not working?" Shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, it worked for me. However, you are causing all this chaos. It must not work if you are the cause. Go with Geralt. See what needs to be done." Her eyes widened, her jaw dropped. "Are you insane? They want to take me to the Crystal Crypt. I'll never get out of there. My mother went there and never returned." The dragons took to the air once again, circling overhead. The owls joined them. Soon there were other birds and winged creatures circling above the castle. Geralt swooped down, grabbed Amaranth with his wing, and took off into the darkness. The birds and winged creatures followed him. Oizu flew over the wall and into the castle. He landed close to Ojulor. "You have done well. She will be far away, and her evil will not transcend this castle." His eyes widened, his eyebrows lifted. "I did not realize how evil she was. She was devious at times, but never truly evil." The dragon shook his head, flapped his wings, and off he went over the castle wall and left behind Ojulor. The owls landed at its feet and looked up at him and tilted their heads from side to side. He walked back to his study and sat down at his desk. This time he didn't start writing. He just sat there thinking, how can I be so wrong? She said that her mother had left her many years ago, but never said why. I figured she didn't want to talk about it. Oldham and Ash flew in and sat on his desk. Both were blinking their eyes and tilting their heads side to side in unison. Ojulor looked up at them and shook his head. She comes from a long line of evil. There is no good to come from her. We know you love her, but you are going to have to let her go. Oldham told him while Ash sat there and nodded his head. No, and yes. Clerk strolled in and stood in front of the desk. The castle will be much better without her. She was never nice to me. Ojulor nodded and grimaced. He picked up his pen and wrote down his thoughts in his notebook. The mystical forest creatures slowly gathered in Ojulor's study and out in the hall. Zersit flew above them and landed on his desk. Advantage of being miniature. He could get through the crowd easily. Although the room was now crowded, not one spoke, but just watched him write. And actually, I'm going to end it there because that's the end of chapter 1.
Yay! Thank you so much. That's super fun. You've got some really interesting character names in this story. Where did you get the idea for those names?
Actually, I go to a website that I have marked that has all kinds of names, and they do fantasy names, and I just would go through there and say, oh, that one looks good.
Cool.
But I never thought about reading them out loud. So it's like, okay, how's this one pronounced?
Yeah, that can be a problem. What was the hardest part of writing this book for you?
Remembering all the creatures. Okay. So I have a huge stack of cards that has all of the creatures on them. Because I handwrite, even though I'm very techie, I love the handwriting. It sticks in my brain better when I handwrite them down on the little 3x5 cards.
Sure, yeah. Cool, very cool. And is this part of a series, or is this a standalone novel?
At this point, it's a standalone, but I do have plans for more.
So at some point, we'll see more in this universe.
Yes.
Awesome. I look forward to that. Thank you so much for coming on the program and reading for us. As I've said several times, it's like being 6 again. So thank you for indulging me with your stories. And I look forward to having you back on the program for your next book.
I will gladly join you again.
Thank you so much.